Hi, welcome back to the Taking Care 22 podcast. I'm your host. My name is Meg Obanoff, and we're starting out by just breaking down some legal concepts that are important when we're thinking about planning, estate planning, wills, trusts, powers of attorney, probate. So in our last episode, we talked about what is a power of attorney and why they're super important. This time I thought we would talk about another thing that people are calling about with questions a lot, and that is what is a probate? So a lot of us have heard the word probate. A lot of people kind of know it's something not great, time consuming, expensive, but like they're not exactly sure what it is and how you can avoid it. So what a probate is it's a court process that happens when you pass away. If you have not done any estate planning and you have some assets, specifically over $100,000 or $100,000 or more. This is in the state of Hawaii because the laws are different in every state. So I'm just talking about Hawaii because that's where I'm licensed to practice law. And that's where I do practice law. So in Hawaii, if you have any real estate or if you have assets that are worth more than $100,000, and if you don't really do anything to plan for that, meaning do a trust or name beneficiaries, then when you pass away, your estate has to go through a process called probate. So probate is the process of the court appointing someone. That person's called your personal representative and giving them the authority to sign off on things and manage things on your behalf. So if you don't have any estate plan and you pass away and you have over $100,000, then your estate will go through probate. What that actually means is usually someone calls us, contacts us by phone or email. We do an intake with them, find out what the assets are when the person passed away. We do need to get a copy of the death certificate. That's best if we have a copy of that, but that does take about 30 days. It can take longer if there's an autopsy or other things going on. So typically we want to have a death certificate in order to do the probate. That's not a hard and fast rule. If there's an emergency situation, sometimes we can get the mortuary to write a letter verifying that the person has passed away, and that will work to open a probate as well. So we would do an initial filing at court, and our goal is to have that reviewed by the registrar of probate and to get someone appointed. So the person who is finally appointed personal representative, once we get them appointed, their job is to figure out what there is, looking through mail, the computer files, figuring out, like if they didn't do estate planning, they might not have a list of where they bank. So sometimes that's a tricky job. One thing you can do to help make it easier for your personal representative or your trustee is just keep a list of where your accounts are. So once the personal representative is appointed, they have to inventory the assets. Their job is to protect the assets. Sometimes that means securing things, changing locks if they're worried beneficiaries are going to come try to clean out the safe or things like that. I know that sounds crazy, but everything I'm saying has happened in the years that I've been practicing. So once the person has kind of locked everything down and figure out what there is, the personal representative's job is to pay all the bills for the decedent. Sometimes they are all known. So maybe there's a child who's caring for an elderly parent. They know who all the creditors are, where all the bills are getting paid because they've been doing it already. And then when the person passes, they maybe have a final electric bill, hospital bill, and they know everything. Sometimes when the person hasn't been managing the decedent's money, they don't really know like what their credit card debts were. So they'll want to publish notice in the newspaper. Sometimes you'll see those like in the Maui News or the Honolulu Advertiser. And the reason people are doing that is because it creates like a speak now or forever hold your peace kind of situation where it shortens the timeline for people to come forward. So you publish it in the newspaper. and follow the law in doing that, we can advise you on that. And then people have a certain amount of time to come forward. And if they don't come forward within that time, if they call 3 days after that time limit is expired, we're allowed to say, oh, I'm so sorry, you didn't get your claim in time. And so they don't get it. So that's why the other reason why people will publish. One, because they don't know. And two, because they want to cut off the creditor claim legally so that anyone who comes a year later and asks for money, they can't. That's not the same as known creditors. Obviously, if you know your loved one was in the hospital, you can reasonably expect that there is going to be a hospital bill. This is more like a Discover card that you didn't even know existed, and they come in after the claim period expired. So once the bills are paid, the assets are figured out and the bills are paid, then it's the job of the personal representative to distribute according to what the will says. So this is not like a creative exercise. We want the personal representative to do exactly what the will says. If you're the personal representative and it says deed the house to this person, that's what you do. You don't get to deed the house to yourself if it says to deed it to somebody else. I think a lot of our the people who call are very well-intentioned personal representatives, but every once in a while we get a really crazy call where someone says, I've been paying the mortgage on this property that I inherited, and I just got a foreclosure notice. And so obviously the personal representative is not using that money to put it toward the mortgage. And so we'll say, like, how long has that been happening? One time this happened and they were like, 10 years. So if you're a beneficiary, don't wait 10 years. You are entitled to a copy of the will or the trust. You're entitled to an accounting. Usually that takes about a year for the person to figure everything out. You're not entitled to an accounting in the second week. You're not going to get your inheritance at the funeral. But after a reasonable period of time has gone on, we do expect personal representatives that we're working with to be transparent, to provide copies of the documents, to provide an accounting, to keep the beneficiaries apprised of what's going on. That's really the best way to ensure that people aren't starting to suspect that you're doing something weird. So we really want our trustees and our personal representatives to be as transparent as possible in the probate process.